Kiki, do you love me? Are you driving? Do you ever really want to Kiki? Do you love me? Are you driving?
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a list where I go over what I felt were the 15 best albums of 2018 so far. Of course, these albums are listed in no particular order. We will link and list all of them down there in the description box so you can see reviews for all of them too. And yeah, let's go. Whoa. First, let me shout out the brand new Death Grips album Year of the Snitch, an incredible release for the experimental hip-hop trio, although it is like their least hip-hop album yet, with the band embracing elements of experimental rock and jazz rock and krautrock and electronic music, drum and bass. Of course, the group's very grim, dark, and internet-based aesthetic is still alive and well. The lyrics are really exciting and cryptic. The production very organic and thrilling. Don't really have too many bad things to say about this record. It's honestly kind of growing on me as one of the band's best. And yeah. Next, the new Sophie record, Oil of Every Pearl's Insides, a really diverse, off-the-wall, and absolutely insane art pop record. Really awesome to sort of see Sophie undergo this fantastic artistic transition into, I guess, a more formal experimental pop icon as opposed to a somewhat obscure electronic music producer. I would love to hear a release at some point into the future that's maybe a bit more stylistically focused or something that has a more cohesive flow to it, but all the material on this thing respectively is really, really bold, adventurous, and inventive. So if you want to hear an art pop record that really rides the fringes, then do not miss out on this one. Of course, I have to give a nod to the Kanye West Kid Cudi collaboration, Kids See Ghosts. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm free. This thing is incredible. This thing is fantastic. It's fire, track for track for track. Kid Cudi and Kanye West, over really amazing and cutting-edge production, truly bring out the best in one another, putting out their best material in a pretty long time. No doubt I will be celebrating this record throughout the rest of this year and pretty hardcore at the end of the year too, so yeah. Next, the new Judas Priest album, Firepower. Amazing, fantastic heavy metal record. Definitely going to be the heavy metal album of the year, and definitely one of the better heavy metal records of the decade too. The band really is like back in peak form on this album. Not only is the production great, the performances are excellent. Rob Halford's voice sounds amazing. The guitar solos are pretty slick too. Nearly every song on this thing is fire. It's just really excellent to hear one of the pioneers of heavy metal music continuing to do the genre so much justice and show that there's still gas left in the tank. There's still gas left in the tank. Next, Kanye West's most personal, vulnerable, and harrowing album yet, Ye. Might not be as tight, hard-hitting, and straightforward as Pusha T's Daytona, which is also one of the very good albums this year, or as exciting and as experimental as Kids See Ghosts, but still a very formidable release. I think one of the more interesting records in Kanye's discography will most likely go down as one of the more underrated albums he's ever released. Most likely because it is so short, most likely because it's not packed full of hits. But for those listeners who are trying to embark on a truly personal and dark and somewhat disturbing experience with Kanye West through his mindset at this point in time, this album is a must listen. Regardless of how critics and fans interpret this album down the road, I think this record is surely going to be a mark of a very interesting point in Kanye West's career, because it seems like the more volatile and the more unfiltered he gets both in his music and on social media, the less people are kind of taking to him in a way. And that doesn't go just for this record, but also The Life of Pablo. So it'll be interesting to see if from here, does Kanye West continue to get more artistically unhinged and experimental? Does he knock down even more boundaries? I mean, yes, while Ye is one of his more meager releases at just, 7 tracks and 20 minutes and change, I would like to believe that there is more where all of this came from on some kind of future larger release. And given that it's Kanye West, there's really no predicting what direction that record is going to go in. Next, I want to shout out the US Girls album, In a Poem Unlimited, surely the most diverse and versatile indie and art pop album you're going to hear this year. Singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Megan Remy really does cover all the bases on this thing, from pop rock to alternative dance to like disco, psychedelic pop, and neo-psychedelia, but her standout voice and very sharp songwriting ties the entire album together, even if it does seem like the flow and the track list is a little all over the place. Even though this album lacks a central voice of sorts, there are so many other quality aspects to it that it can't go ignored, and it's just so sticky. It's such a sticky album. Next, the latest record from the UK jazz outfit Sons of Kemet, Your Queen is a Reptile, with just a couple of horns, a couple of drummers, a few guest vocalists here and there. These guys stir together one of the most exciting jazz releases of the year, hands down. Sure, while it's not incredibly complex compositionally and there's not a lot of melodic layers to it or anything like that, the solos, the tight performances, the intense and amazing grooves throughout this record are electrifying. And it may have a lot to do with the tone of the instrumentation, but there's certainly something about the music on this record that reminds me of Southern jazz music in America, specifically to the New Orleans area. But of course, that is mixed with this very dark, cutting-edge UK jazz aesthetic. So it's really a sweet and an interesting and a smart mix of different jazz styles and sounds. Great playing, production, and chemistry all around. Pretty versatile record too, as they dip their toes into a few different musical styles here and there. So jazz heads, please take note. Excellent album. Give it a listen. Don't miss it. Next, I really enjoy the new Uchis album, Isolation. And it's funny, going into this record, I didn't really anticipate I would like it all that much. I haven't personally found Callie to be all that strong of a vocalist on past efforts. But upon listening to this entire album, I found a kind of weird, amateurish, endearing, punky attitude about the way she goes about things. I also thought the pillowy and dreamy aesthetic, which usually turns me off on other records, actually comes through quite well on this release. Also thought the production was pretty excellent. Some of the guest stars added quite a bit to the album, and I liked all of the bases that she covered on this album too. Everything from vintage vocal pop to Latin pop and more. I'm hoping that this album is just kind of the beginning for Callie, because, I mean, she's coming together with great songs, great aesthetic. It's very artful, it's very catchy, very sensual, sexy record that I'm enjoying quite a bit, and yeah, just looking forward to more. Next, it's one of the most experimental and adventurous rock records of the decade, in my opinion, and that is Jack White's Boarding House Reach. Never expected an album like this from Jack, personally. He's always been somebody who has very much made it clear that in many respects he is a traditionalist. He is one who kind of keeps the torch lit for the past and very much stays and sticks within that hip-hop, that garage rock, that sometimes psychedelic, very bluesy wheelhouse. Doesn't really step too far outside of it, especially in his solo career thus far. And now he's like totally just busted all of those walls down with this new album over here. Embracing elements of hip-hop music, electronic music, and more, avant-garde music as well, and mixing that, of course, with, those usual bass lines of blues and garage rock and so on and so forth. So it's not too alien, it's not too separate from stuff Jack has done in the past, but still, it's a brand new day, it's a brave new world, it's a whole new era, clearly, for Jack and his music, and hopefully this record is the mark of a very interesting future for him, because honestly, I feel like Jack has been punching under his weight quite a bit since the demise of the White Stripes. I mean, he's still at a point in his career where he should be challenging, he should be pushing envelopes, he still should be putting out his boldest and most interesting material. Maybe for some fans, Boarding House Reach was a little too much too quickly, considering how much Jack has built up a certain level of expectations and predictability in his discography so far. I feel like a release like this he has been kind of holding back on for a while, but I'm glad it's finally here. I'm glad it is as in your face and unapologetic as it is. And in my opinion, this is what rock music needs right now. It needs more people willing to kind of step out of their comfort zone, experiment, try new things, and update the freaking genre so that it functions and serves a purpose in 2018. Next, the new Natalia Lafourcade album, Musas Volume 2. Of course, this is the second installment of music that she has released in the past couple of years, where she's taking a pretty much acoustic approach to going back and revisiting, rewriting, repurposing, but also creating some original material within the Mexican folk and I guess greater South American folk music tradition. The guitar playing is amazing. Her voice is fantastic. The songs are romantic, gorgeous, beautiful, and inspiring. This thing is so sweet. It is so wonderful. It is so gorgeous. It's so classy. I want to give this album a hug, because this album is so cute! Next, I gotta give a shout out to probably my favorite electronic music album so far this year, Against All Logic, 2012 to 2017. Obviously, some material for a period of 5 years that Nicholas Jar, electronic music producer Nicholas Jar, had been working on from 2012 to 2017. And he's releasing it under a different name entirely. And I'm kind of just loving his usual micro house aesthetic, but under the Against All Logic name, there are groovier bass lines, there's a lot more sampling involved too. The instrumental progression of these tracks is amazing and keeps these songs engaging from start to finish. Again, for me, this album, it's very much about the grooves. I'm addicted to them on this album. It's an addiction. I want to shout out the new Portal album as well, an amazing technical, experimental, and avant-garde death metal album. Best production the band has shown so far on a release. The compositions on this thing are amazingly technical and dizzying too. The sound is enveloping, it's soul-crushing, it's so dark. This band's whole deal, it's like really from another fucking realm. It's like another dimension. Next, the new MGMT album, Little Dark Age. The duo really bounces back on this thing with a kind of nostalgic, hypnagogic synth pop album, heavily inspired by the works of Ariel Pink, I think. Tunes are fantastic. Production is fantastic. It's a little bit of a departure from the usually psychedelic neo-psych aesthetic that MGMT shoots for. Again, a little bit darker, a little bit gother, a little bit more new wave, but still, I mean, the talent is still there, the songwriting is still there, the great ideas are still there. At the time, I said this is easily their best release since, like, Congratulations, and it might actually be my favorite of theirs so far in general. So it's really awesome to hear MGMT still putting out amazing work, still at an artistic peak, and just kind of makes me more excited for their work into the future. Hey everyone. I was putting the finishing touches on this video, and then I remembered that I forgot to talk about the new Parquet Quartz album, Wide Awake, also one of my favorite albums of the year. Awesome mix of post-punk and garage rock and the like, and a lot of very political lyrics on the record too that I like quite a bit. The band's smartest record to date. I think they're most consistent and ambitious as well. Very fun and very smart listen. Kicks ass. And, yeah. Fuck yeah to this record. And finally, damn Pagi, JPEGMAFIA with Veteran, my first, I think, loved album this year. That was the first record I think I gave a super positive review to in 2018, and it has still stuck with me hardcore throughout the rest of the year. I've only grown to love even more the incredibly off-the-wall, experimental, and adventurous production on this thing, Peggy's incredible wit, his comedic charm in some of the tracks on this thing, his very in-your-face, aggressive, and over-the-top personality. And even though this is an underground record, Peggy very creatively borrows a lot of ideas and concepts and hooks from the mainstream and kind of reappropriates them and sort of turns them into a grimier, more adventurous, and I guess a less dumbed down experience. It's like he borrows these trashy lowest common denominator ideas and actually makes them kind of smarter, while also displaying this completely ridiculous attitude that I kind of can't get enough of. It's amazing to hear the more underground wing of the hip-hop genre still putting out incredible records in the latter part of the decade. Hopefully that continues all the way until the end, and hopefully we hear from Pagi again soon before the decade's over too. And that is going to be it. Those are my favorite albums of 2018 so far in no particular order. Again, all those albums are listed and reviews linked down there in the description box. Check out any of these records that you haven't listened to yet or maybe slipped by you, because I promise you, I guarantee you they are most definitely worth a shot, worth your time. Hopefully you get some great recommendations out of this. And transition, have you given all of these albums a listen? God, I hope so. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music 2018 list recommendations forever.